So I think that the microsphere story was a cover story for to say it was thermite, and they did this as well with the fires, because another of the effects that John Hutchison observes in his experiments is these weird fires. Okay, and you could see that's why they needed these molten metal stories to say that this was what the fire was. This was the molten metal dripping down, all this sort of thing, but it's actually not, because you can see these hot car fires next to the paper that's not burning. So you've got this unconventional fire. So, again, we're seeing a lot of these data points of evidence tying together, and we're looking at some unusual type of technology which is at work, which we don't know the full details of, but we do know that John Hutchison has reproduced all of these effects that, in his experiments over the last 20 years. And as I may have mentioned before, we also know that Los Alamos National Laboratories know about John's work, because Colonel John Alexander visited John Hutchison in 1983 and spent 4 months with him working at his makeshift lab in Canada. And we've got documents which prove that. And if you listen to Colonel John Alexander, he's again been on this, Coast to Coast and these other programs. He makes no secret of the fact that he visited John Hutchison. He claims that John Hutchison is using what he calls PK, which is psychokinesis, to levitate things. Psychokinesis is the technique whereby you can actually use, your own mind to move objects. And that's what John Alexander has claimed that John Hutchison is doing, and which is just bizarre, So, we know that Los Alamos knows about this technology, and I think they know exactly what it is, and I suspect that when people like Jim Fetzer come out and start attacking Dr. Judy Wood, as soon as she makes the connection to the Hutchison effect, I think he knows what the technology is, or at least he knows somebody. He's in contact with somebody who knows what the technology is and how it was used.
Let me ask you this: does this technology affect humans, flesh, the same as it does solids like concrete or steel? Or?
Yeah, well, I think it can, because if you look at some of the witness accounts, there's one particular one where some of the first responders are walking through World Trade Center 6. And I think at the same time as that building gets its holes, one of this party just disappears into thin air. So that's what the witness says. So it looks like it can affect people the same as it affects buildings. But I mean, who knows?
Sure.
Can we see a live demonstration? I mean, hopefully not.
Right.
So
have they rebuilt there at the Twin Towers?
I believe not. I think there is a small amount of construction. I'd have to go and check recently. When we were there in 2008, there was no real significant construction. When I recently saw some type of webcam picture, there is a webcam. There did seem to be some type of structure built on there, but it looked sort of like just some fairly superficial structure. It wasn't with glass or anything like that. It was just some kind of framework. So I don't know what that was for, but we do know that they've been trucking in dirt in and out of the site.
Still,
yeah, up until a few months ago, we had pictures of dirt actually piled up at the site, which we think is kind of like a decontamination. Dr. Woods uses this expression of changing diapers or changing nappies, as we call them here. So the ongoing effects, I think, are still indicating that they can't actually build a new building on the site, not on where the towers were. They've rebuilt World Trade Center 7 now, but even the base of that, the base of the new World Trade Center Tower 7, whatever the name of what's replaced it, that doesn't have any windows in the base. Up to about 4 or 5 stories high, there are no windows in this building. The windows start above that.
Do you have a comment on the magnetic changes that we saw in Alaska and other?
Well, yeah, because that's another signature of some type of energy effect. And the very significant thing, if you look at the trace 4911, Dr. Wood's got this on, if you go onto the Hurricane Erin series, go onto drjudywood.com and click on the Erin study, and then I think it's on page 5, you'll find herring study, and you'll see this.
Hold that thought just a minute. We'll be right back here. We got one more short segment. Back in a minute. Okay, we're back here, and we only have about 3 minutes or so here to closing. I got 2 callers, and I just gave you. We don't have much time, so I just need a real concise question. First is John in Florida. What's your question?
First,
hello.
Hello, you there?
What's your question? Because we only got less than 3 minutes.
Buildings 1 and 2 went down, and they were explosions because the people who were there, the firefighters and the rest of them, all eyewitnesses reports all testified to explosions. Building 7, Larry Silverstein admitted later on BBC that he called the fire department, or they called him, and he said, pull the building.
Okay, I got that. Thanks for calling. You have any comment before we get the next caller?
Yeah, you should ask yourself whether Larry Silverstein was telling the truth, knowing what else you know about him. I think as the towers actually came down, you probably won't have heard any explosions. Before the towers came down, yes, witnesses did hear explosions. An explosion doesn't equal a bomb. If you put an egg in a microwave oven and heat it up, it will explode, but it's not a bomb. The technology which was at work was weakening the metal. If there were any pressurized tanks which had metal, which were made of metal, such as fire extinguishers, these would have exploded because the structure was compromised. Indeed, firefighters reported explosions of Scott packs on the fire trucks outside the building. So again, the evidence for explosions, I think, is perhaps not what people assume it is.
But regardless, it won't explain what happened. We got one more caller. Quick question. Jeff in Chicago. You got a quick question because we got just less than 2 minutes.
Sure. Hey, Mr. Johnson, thank you so much. Listen, you and Ralph, thank you also. You asked why aren't people filing lawsuits where they are individually. I am willing and able to be one of the Chicagoans and one of the Illinoisans that want to file these lawsuits, injunctions. We need to get the word out and file actually lawsuits. I'm a 9/11 truth candidate for public office. You asked why people don't want to look at the no plane issue. There was no fuselage found at the towers. There was no fuselage found at the towers. There were no pancake floors. So you can contact me to get these lawsuits going. Directed energy weapons. Artie Wheeler is a researcher that talks about Tomahawk cruise missiles. Major General Albert Stubblebine has talked about how the plane does not fit in that hole. It all fits together. No big Boeing crashed in a field in Pennsylvania.
Okay, well, we're running out of time, but thanks for your question here because we're just almost done. You have any short comment before I give you the closing? Go ahead.
Sure. Great. If you can file a lawsuit, fantastic. The documents that Dr. Wood has got on her site, they're all published and you can read them. There may be some useful sort of guidelines in there that you can dig out. I can't really file a lawsuit from this country. If you want to contact me and I can do anything, then I'll try to help in the time that I've got. So, yeah, thanks.
Okay, you got any closing comments? We got probably about a minute left, something like that.
Well, I think it comes down, again, just to looking at the evidence. If you're having problems with anything that I've said, please just check it, spend time, do the legwork, do the brain work. Don't let anyone else give you your opinion. Go and study the primary evidence, look at the primary sources, look at who's smearing whom and what the reason behind that is.
What's your web page?
The website that I have is called checktheevidence, which is all one word.com. You just Google check the evidence and you'll find it. You can put my name in if you want. And the Thermite blog is 911 digits, Thermite free, all one word, .blogspot.com. That'll give you all the links to all the Thermite stuff. It should enable you to deprogram yourself from Thermite if you've been programmed with it.
And then there's Dr. Judy Wood, all one word.com, right?
Yep, that's got the biggest volume of information on there in terms of the photographic evidence, links to some of the videos and some of the witness testimony to back all this up. And I think, when Dr. Wood's book comes out, you're going to find a stack of evidence which is as high as the Twin Towers themselves were. So, I think the way that she does things is to kind of, get about 16 different, points of evidence just to back up one point at least, and then if there's 100, she'll put the 100 in. So this is why it's taken us such a long time to actually put this together, because there's such a lot to actually put in. There's a lot of evidence to prove what we're saying is true.
As an amazing output, about a gallon an hour.
Okay, well, thanks, and thanks for everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.
They needed these molten metal stories to say that this was what the fire was. This was the molten metal dripping down, all this sort of thing. But it's actually not, because you can see these hot car fires next to the paper that's not burning. So you've got this unconventional. All of these effects that, in his experiments over the last 20 years. And as I may have mentioned before, we also know that Los Alamos National Laboratories know about John's work, because Colonel John Alexander visited John Hutchison in 1983. So I think that the microsphere story was a cover story for to say it was thermite, and they did this as well with the fires, because another of the effects that John Hutchison observes in his experiments is these weird fires. Okay, and you could see that's why they'll fire. So. Again, we're seeing a lot of these data points of evidence tying together and we're looking at some unusual type of technology which is at work, which we don't know the full details of, but we do know that John Hutchison has reproduced and spent 4 months with him working at his makeshift lab in Canada. And we've got documents which prove that. And if you listen to Colonel John Alexander, he's again been on this, Coast to Coast and these other programs. He makes no secret of the fact that he visited John Hutchison